Ethan Cole sat at the corner table of a noisy spaceport bar, his drink untouched. He was tired from weeks of cargo runs, tired of fixing his old ship, and tired of taking jobs from people he didn't trust. But credits were running low, and repairs weren't free. A man in a dark coat slid into the seat across from him. His eyes were cold, his smile thin. "I have a job for you," the man said. Ethan didn't answer right away. He had learned that people who started conversations like that rarely brought good news. "It's simple transport," the man continued. "2 passengers, pick them up at Dock 7, take them to a colony on the outer rim." He slid a small data chip across the table. "Payment is triple your usual rate." Ethan frowned. Triple pay for a short run was never a good sign. "Why not use a regular passenger liner?" he asked. "They need to travel quietly," the man replied. His tone made it sound like there was no room for more questions. "You're discreet, Captain Cole. That's why I chose you." Ethan almost said no, but his ship's engine repairs had drained his last savings. Without work, he wouldn't make it another week. So he took the chip and nodded. Dock 7 was quiet when Ethan arrived. A cold wind carried the smell of fuel and metal. 2 figures stood in the shadows near a cargo crate. One was tall, wearing a faded cloak that covered most of her body. The other was small, holding her hand tightly. As Ethan walked closer, the light revealed them. The tall one was an alien woman, her skin pale silver with faint markings along her neck. Her eyes were large and a soft shade of violet. The smaller one was a girl, maybe 8 years old, with the same silver skin and markings. Her hair was tangled, her clothes worn thin. The woman lowered her head slightly. "Are you Captain Cole?" she asked in a soft, uncertain voice. Her human language was broken, but clear enough. "Yes," Ethan said. "I'll be your pilot." He looked around. No one else was nearby. "Let's get you aboard." The girl stared at him with wide eyes, clutching her mother's hand tighter as they stepped onto his ship. He noticed something, a faint bruise on the girl's arm. He didn't ask, but it stayed in his mind inside the ship. Ethan showed them to a small passenger cabin. The woman thanked him quietly. The girl sat on the bed, swinging her legs but not smiling as Ethan prepared for departure. He couldn't shake the unease in his gut. Something about this job felt wrong. The man at the bar had given no real details. And now he was transporting a widow and child to a place he'd never been. Once they were in space, Ethan checked the route on his console. The colony was far from major trade lanes, isolated. It's a kind of place you didn't end up by accident. Hours passed. The ship hummed softly as it cut through the black. Ethan stayed in the cockpit, trying to focus on the controls, but through the thin wall, he could hear the girl's voice, quiet and afraid. She spoke in her own language. The words gentle but full of sadness. Later, when he went to check on them, he found the woman sitting on the bed with her daughter, asleep in her lap. She was humming a slow, strange melody that sent chills down his spine. "Is she okay?" Ethan asked. The woman looked up. "She is tired," she said. "We traveled many days before. No home." Her eyes held a deep pain. Ethan nodded and left the cabin. He didn't know their story, but it was clear they weren't traveling by choice. That night, Ethan lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. He couldn't sleep. The image of the bruise on the girl's arm kept coming back. The sound of her crying in the dark echoed in his mind. He thought about the triple payment, about how easily he had accepted without asking questions. He thought about the colony remote, hidden, and perfect for people who wanted to disappear. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice told him that when they arrived, something bad would happen to the woman and her child, and once he delivered them, there would be nothing he could do. Ethan turned onto his side, closing his eyes. But the girl's soft sobs from the cabin next door made it impossible to rest. In that moment, he realized this job was going to be more complicated than he ever imagined. Ethan woke to the soft hum of the ship's engines. The first hours of travel had been quiet, but the uneasy feeling in his chest hadn't gone away. He dressed and stepped into the narrow corridor, heading toward the cockpit. As he passed the passenger cabin, the door slid open a little. A small silver hand appeared, followed by a curious face. The alien girl peeked at him with wide violet eyes. Her hair was messy from sleep. "Good morning," Ethan said gently. The girl didn't reply, but she tilted her head like she was studying him. Then she pulled the door open wider and stepped. Into the hall, she was barefoot, her clothes too thin for the ship's cool air. Ethan frowned. "You should wear shoes," he told her, "and a jacket. It's cold here." The woman appeared behind her daughter, her cloak wrapped tightly around her eye. "Sorry," she said. "She likes to see things." She gave Ethan a small nod. "Thank you for helping." Ethan waved it off. "Come on. I'll show you the cockpit." The girl's face lit up, her first smile since boarding. She followed her mother close behind when they entered the cockpit. The stars stretched across the glass like silver dust scattered in the dark. The girl's eyes widened as she pressed her hands to the view. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Ethan asked. The girl whispered something in her language. The woman translated. She says, "It looks like the songs of our people." Ethan didn't understand the meaning, but he liked the sound of it. For the next few hours, the girl wandered the cockpit, touching controls she didn't understand, asking questions in broken human speech. Ethan answered what he could, smiling despite himself during the afternoon cycle. A sudden alarm beeped on the console. A small meteor shower was ahead. Ethan gripped the controls and guided the ship through the floating rocks. The girl gasped. When one struck the shield, the impact sent a toolbox sliding off a shelf. Heading straight for her, Ethan moved fast, grabbing the box before it hit her. "Careful," he said firmly. "You need to stay seated when things like this happen." The girl nodded, her small hands trembling. She glanced at her mother, who pulled her close. Murmuring something soft, Ethan returned the toolbox to its place. But inside, something shifted. He wasn't just transporting passengers anymore. He was protecting them. Hours later, when the ship was steady again, Ethan checked the navigation data. The destination was still many days away. He tapped the screen and pulled up the colony's file. Sparse details appeared. No tourist centers, no trade markets, no open communications. His stomach tightened. He remembered the rumors from other pilots about places where people disappeared, places where ships arrived full of passengers but left empty. He didn't like the thought. As he sat there, the woman approached. Her hands were folded in front of her. "Captain," she began slowly, "you know this place? The one we go." Ethan hesitated. "I've heard of it," he said. "Not much." She lowered her gaze. We not want to go." The words hit him harder than he expected. "Then why are you going?" he asked. She glanced toward the sleeping girl. "Because we have no choice." Ethan wanted to ask more, but her voice trembled, and he could see she was afraid. He decided not to push. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of the situation grow heavier. Later that night, Ethan walked past the passenger cabin and paused. The door was half open. Inside, the woman was sitting on the bed with her daughter curled against her. She was singing in a low, strange melody. The girl's breathing slowed as she fell asleep. Ethan didn't know the words, but they carried a sadness he couldn't ignore. He closed the door quietly and returned to his bunk. When he lay down, his eyes drifted to the navigation screen glowing faintly from the corner. The coordinates for the colony blinked in steady rhythm. Each blink felt like a countdown. He thought about the man in the dark coat, about the triple payment, about the girl's thin clothes and quiet eyes, and for the first time he wondered if delivering them was something he could actually do. The engines hummed softly in the background. But his mind was loud. Every memory of the day, the girl's smile in the cockpit, the way she clung to her mother, the way the woman's voice cracked when she spoke. All of it kept him awake. Outside the ship, the stars passed in, endless. Silence inside. Ethan Cole lay staring at the ceiling, knowing the journey had just begun, and so had his doubts. Ethan woke to the soft rattle of tools in the engine bay. For a moment, he thought it was just the usual vibration of his old freighter. But then he realized it was different. Slower, like someone moving things carefully. He stepped out of his bunk and followed the sound. In the small maintenance room, he found the girl crouched beside an open crate. She was holding a spanner almost as long as her arm, turning it in the dim light. "You're up early," Ethan said. The girl jumped, her silver eyes wide. She quickly set the tool down. Murmuring something in her own language, her mother appeared. In the doorway, her face pale. "I'm sorry, Captain," she said quickly. She's curious. She likes to see how things work. Ethan shook his head. "It's fine, just..." These tools can be dangerous. He crouched down to the girl's level. "You have to be careful." The girl nodded, still staring at him like she was trying to figure him out. They returned to the passenger cabin, and the woman helped her daughter. Settled back on the bed for a moment, Ethan considered walking away. But the unease in his chest wouldn't let him. He sat on the edge of the doorway, his voice steady. "Who are you running from?" he asked. The woman's eyes flickered. "I told you," she said slowly. "We have no home." Ethan leaned forward. "That's not the whole story. You're not just traveling, you're escaping." She looked down at her hands, the silence stretched between them until she finally spoke. "My husband was taken from us during the war," she said. Her voice trembled, but she kept going. "He fought in the border raids. Between your people and mine, he was a traitor, not a soldier, but they thought he had information." Ethan felt his jaw tighten. He had heard too many stories like this, civilians caught in the middle of a conflict they never chose. "They took him," she continued. "I never saw him again. Our home was destroyed. The debt collectors came soon after. They took everything. We had no food, no shelter." She glanced toward her daughter. "She was all I had left." Ethan stayed quiet, letting her speak. "Then the traffickers came," the woman said. "They said they would help us, but their help 'twas a lie. They sold people, especially women and children, my daughter." Her voice broke. She swallowed hard. "She has a rare gift, a singing voice from our bloodline. It can change the emotions of those who hear it. Some use it for beauty, others for cruelty." Ethan's stomach turned. "And the colony I'm supposed to take you to is where they will sell her," the woman finished, her eyes locked on his. "Desperate pleas, Captain. If we go there, we'll never be free." Again, for a long moment, Ethan didn't move. The hum of the ship filled the silence. He thought about the job, the payment, the man in the dark coat. He thought about how easy it had been to say yes without asking why. And now he knew the truth, a truth he couldn't ignore. The girl had fallen asleep again, her small hand clutching the edge of her mother's cloak. Ethan saw the faint bruise on her arm again, and this time it burned in his mind. "You could have told me sooner," he said quietly. The woman's lips trembled. "Would you have believed me?" Ethan didn't answer. He stood and looked out the small round window at the endless stars. When he turned back, he spoke with quiet resolve. "We're not going to that colony." The woman's breath caught. "What?" "I'll find another place for you," Ethan said. "Somewhere safe." Her eyes filled with tears. "But they will come for us. They will come for you." Ethan gave a half smile. Let them try, for the first time. The woman looked at him without fear, only uncertainty and a small flicker of hope. She nodded slowly, holding her daughter closer as Ethan walked back to the cockpit. He felt the weight of his decision settle on his shoulders. He was turning. His back on the deal, on the payment, on the safety of staying out of trouble. But the image of the little girl's violet eyes, filled with silent fear, told him he had no other choice. The navigation console still displayed the coordinates for the colony. Ethan deleted them and began charting a new course, somewhere far enough to hide, somewhere free. The stars outside didn't change, but everything inside him had. He knew now this wasn't just another job. This was the start of something that could get him killed, and he was fine with that. Ethan sat in the cockpit, staring at the blinking cursor on the navigation screen. His finger hovered over the confirmation key. One press, and the old coordinates to the slave colony would be gone forever. He knew once he did this, there would be no turning back. He pressed it, the route vanished, replaced by empty star maps. He leaned back in his chair, the hum of the ship suddenly feeling louder in the passenger cabin. The woman was still holding her daughter. The girl was half asleep, her small hand clutching the edge of her mother's cloak. The woman looked up when Ethan entered. Her eyes searched his face for answers. "I've erased the destination." Ethan said, "We're going somewhere else." She stared at him for a moment, as if trying to believe his words. "Do you know where?" "Not yet," Ethan admitted. "But I know places where they won't find you. It won't be easy. Once they realize you're not coming, they'll send ships after us." Her hands tightened around her daughter. "Then we must be ready." Ethan gave a short nod. "I'll make sure we are." He headed back to the cockpit and began running the ship's stealth systems, old but still functional. He masked the ship's transponder, making it harder for anyone to track their signal. He rerouted power to shield the heat signature. All the while, his mind replayed the meeting with the man in the dark coat. He could already imagine the anger when that man realized Ethan had gone off course. Hours later, the ship's warning lights flashed red. A proximity alert blared through the cabin. Ethan checked the sensors. 2 small craft were approaching. Fast from behind. "They've already found us," Ethan muttered. The woman appeared in the doorway, holding her daughter close. "What is it?" "Bounty hunters," Ethan said, his voice calm but firm. "Go back to your cabin and strap in." She obeyed without question. Ethan powered up the engines to full. The ship groaned as it pushed beyond its usual cruising speed. The hunters followed, their weapons already locking on. He weaved the freighter through an asteroid field, jagged rocks spinning past the windows. The ship shuddered as debris scraped the hull. "Hold together," Ethan muttered to the old vessel. His hands moved with practiced precision, turning, diving, rolling. A flash of light burst past the cockpit. A warning shot. Ethan knew the next one wouldn't miss. He hit a switch, releasing a trail of scrap metal from the ship's storage. The hunter's targeting systems locked onto the debris instead, giving him a precious few seconds to change course. In the back, the girl clung to her mother. The woman's eyes were fixed on the door, trusting Ethan to keep them alive. One of the hunter ships managed to cut through the asteroid field and draw closer. Ethan checked the weapons panel. The freighter wasn't built for combat, but it had a few defense tricks. He activated the rear plasma cannon and fired a single blast. It wasn't meant to destroy, only to force the enemy to back off. The shot grazed the hunter's wing, sending it spinning off course. The second hunter tried to overtake him from above. Ethan pulled the freighter into a sudden dive. Hugging the curve of a massive asteroid, the hunter clipped its underside and exploded in a flash of white light. The blast shook the freighter, alarms screaming. When the sensors finally showed no more pursuit, Ethan slowed the ship and exhaled. Sweat trickled down his temple. His hands loosened on the controls. The woman stepped back into the cockpit, her daughter still in her arms. "Are we safe?" she asked. "For now," Ethan replied, "but they'll keep coming." She reached into her cloak and pulled out a small object, a crystal pendant. The gem glowed faintly in the dim light. "This is all we have of value," she said. It belonged to my husband's family. Take it for saving us. Ethan shook his head. I'm not doing this for payment. Her eyes softened. Then, why? He paused, looking at the girl who was resting her head on her mother's shoulder. Because someone has to, he said quietly. The woman nodded and stepped back, holding her daughter close. As Ethan set a new heading, he knew the decision he had made was final. He had just turned enemies into hunters and himself into their prey. But he also knew he couldn't live with himself if he'd chosen the easy way. The stars ahead stretched like a silver road. Somewhere out there was a safe place, and he was going to find it. The freighter drifted in the shadow of a massive asteroid. Its lights dimmed. Ethan sat in the cockpit. Scanning the black space beyond, the ship's sensors were quiet. But he knew silence didn't mean safety. The bounty hunters would regroup. And when they came, they'd bring more firepower. He tapped the comms panel. Cycling through encrypted channels, he needed a place to hide, a safe harbor. But every contact he trusted was either too far or too scared to cross whoever had sent those hunters. In the passenger cabin, the woman was tending to her daughter. The little girl's small hands trembled as she held a cup of warm broth Ethan had made from emergency rations. Drink slowly, her mother whispered in their language. We will be all right. Ethan stepped inside. He didn't want to interrupt, but the girl looked up at him with tired, violet eyes. Are they gone? She asked in broken human speech. 4. Now, Ethan said, crouching so he was at her level. But we have to stay quiet and hidden. The woman studied his face. How long can we run? Ethan was honest. As long as it takes. Hours passed in uneasy stillness. Then the sensors beeped. A faint blip appeared. Too small for a warship, too fast for a merchant vessel. It was a scout. The kind hunters used to track targets. They found us again, Ethan muttered. He powered up the engines, the freighter rumbling to life. The sudden movement made the girl grab her mother's hand. Ethan swung the ship around the asteroid and accelerated. The scout followed, sending out a signal. Within minutes, 2 larger ships appeared on the radar. They'll box us in, Ethan said, his fingers flying over the controls. He dove into a dense field of space debris, shattered remains of an old mining station. Metal beams and broken panels spun slowly in the void, creating a deadly maze. The hunters followed, firing at the freighter. Energy blasts lit up the darkness. Ethan twisted and banked, using the debris as cover. One hunter clipped a metal beam and spun out, but the other stayed close, in the passenger cabin. The girl pressed her hands over her ears. The woman held her tightly, whispering to her in their language. Ethan checked his weapons panel. The freighter's rear cannon was still functional. But the targeting system was damaged. He would have to fire manually. He rerouted control to the pilot's console and took aim. Hold still, he muttered to the ship. He squeezed the trigger. A bolt of plasma shot out, grazing the hunters. Side. It wasn't enough to destroy it, but it forced the pilot to back off. The girl peeked into the cockpit. You hurt them? She asked. Ethan gave a quick nod, enough to make them think twice. But the fight wasn't over. The scout ship reappeared, circling ahead. Ethan realized it wasn't trying to attack, it was leading them into a trap. He changed course. Suddenly, diving toward the upper edge of the debris field. The move caught the scout off guard. Ethan fired another plasma shot. This time, a blast tore through the scout's engine, sending it drifting away in flames. The last hunter hesitated, then turned and retreated. Disappearing into the dark, Ethan exhaled slowly. His hands loosened on the controls. The freighter's hull was scarred, but it was still flying. The woman stepped into the cockpit. You saved us again, she said quietly. Ethan shrugged. We're not safe yet. She placed a small container on the console. Alien herbs and powders mixed into a paste. "For your wounds," she said, pointing to a cut on his arm he hadn't noticed. She gently applied the mixture, and a cooling sensation spread through his skin. The girl leaned against his chair. "You are like a shield," she said, smiling faintly. Ethan felt something stir in his chest. It wasn't pride, it was the weight of responsibility. He wasn't just running from hunters anymore. He was fighting for them. As the freighter slipped into the quiet stretch of space beyond the debris field, Ethan knew the battle was far from over. The hunters would regroup. The man in the dark coat would send more, and every time they found him, the fight would get harder. But he also knew one thing. He would never hand him over. Not now, not ever. The stars ahead seemed endless. Somewhere out there was freedom. And he was ready to fight for it, no matter how many enemies came. The freighter drifted out of hyperspace, revealing a pale blue world below. Its surface was dotted with green islands and silver seas. Ethan leaned forward in his seat. The planet wasn't on any official trade map, which was exactly what he needed. "This is Haven's Rest," he said over his shoulder. The woman and her daughter were standing in the doorway, the girl's eyes lit up at the sight of the water shimmering in the distance. "It is beautiful," the woman whispered. Ethan nodded. "It's a free colony. No empire, no slave traders. People here keep to themselves." He guided the freighter toward one of the larger islands. A small settlement appeared, its buildings curved and simple. Blending with the natural landscape, solar sails caught the sunlight, and fishing ships moved slowly across the water as they landed on a simple dirt landing pad. A few locals came to greet them. Humans and aliens alike. Their clothes were plain, their faces curious but not unfriendly. Ethan stepped down first. The warm air carried the scent of the ocean. The girl followed, holding tightly to her mother's hand. She took a deep breath like she'd never smelled clean air before. A tall man with sun-browned skin approached. "Haven's Rest welcomes peaceful travelers," he said. "Stay as long as you need." Captain Ethan gave a polite nod. "Just looking for a safe place for my passengers." The man glanced at the woman and her daughter. His eyes softened. "Then you came to the right place." They were shown to a small hut near the edge of the water. The walls were made of smooth stone, the roof woven from dried leaves. It was simple but clean. The woman touched the walls as if she couldn't believe they were real. "This feels like home," she said quietly. The girl wandered to the open window, staring at the children playing in the shallow water outside. Their laughter carried on the breeze. For the first time, Ethan saw her relax. That evening, the settlement shared a meal with them: fresh fish, sweet fruits, and warm bread. The woman smiled as she ate. The girl even laughed when another child handed her a piece of fruit and ran off. Ethan sat at the edge of the firelight, watching them. The sound of their laughter stirred something in him, something he hadn't felt in years. Later, as the stars filled the night sky, the woman approached him. "You saved us," she said. "We owe you everything. You don't owe me." Ethan replied, "Just live. That's enough." But even as he spoke, his mind stayed alert. He knew this peace might not last. The hunters wouldn't give up over the next few days. The woman began cooking meals in the small hut, sharing them with Ethan. The girl started joining the local children in their games. Her laughter became a familiar sound. Ethan spent his time repairing his ship with the help of local mechanics. He traded spare cargo parts for tools and fresh supplies every night. He returned to the hut to find the woman waiting with food and a quiet smile. But on the fourth day, he noticed something. A stranger had arrived at the settlement, a human pilot with a sleek ship. The pilot asked a few too many questions about recent visitors. His eyes lingered on Ethan's freighter. Ethan's instincts tightened like a drawn wire. That night, he sat outside the hut, watching the dark shoreline. The stranger's ship remained docked at the far edge of the village, its lights dim, as if it were waiting for something. The woman came to stand beside him. "Something is wrong," she said softly. "I think someone's looking for you," Ethan admitted. "We might have been followed." Her hand tightened around the pendant. "At her neck, then? What do we do?" Ethan looked at her, and then at the hut where the girl slept. "We stay ready. If they come, they won't take you without going through me." The woman nodded, but he could see the worry in her eyes. That night, the waves outside seemed louder than usual. The air felt heavy. Ethan lay in his bunk, one hand on the blaster by his side. He had hoped Haven's Rest would be the end of their running, but now he realized it might just be another stop in the fight for their freedom. And if the fight came to this quiet place, Ethan was ready to meet it head-on. The night in Haven's Rest was quiet, but Ethan didn't sleep. He sat by the window of the small hut, watching the shoreline. The moonlight spilled over the silver waves. Somewhere out there, danger was waiting. The stranger's ship was still docked at the far end of the village. Its lights were dim, but Ethan knew better than to believe it was harmless. People like that didn't stay still without a reason. At dawn, the first signs of trouble appeared. A small boat came from the stranger's ship, carrying 2 men and 1 alien with dark, scaled skin. They walked up the beach as if they owned it. Ethan stepped outside before they could reach the hut. His hand rested casually on the blaster at his side, but his eyes were sharp. "Morning," he said. The lead man smiled thinly. "We're looking for our property," he said. "A woman and a child, silver-skinned, easy to spot." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Not here," he replied. The man's smile faded. "You're lying, Captain Cole. We know you brought them here." Behind Ethan, the woman appeared in the doorway, holding her daughter close. The girl's violet eyes widened in fear. The lead man took a step forward. "Hand them over, and you can walk away rich." Ethan didn't move. "They're not yours," he said. "And you're not taking them?" The man's expression hardened. "Then you'll die with them." In the distance, a horn sounded. The signal for danger. The villagers began gathering. Humans and aliens, armed with fishing spears, hunting bows, and a few blasters. They formed a wall behind Ethan. The scaled alien with the hunters snarled, "You think these people can stop us?" Ethan's voice was steady. "I think you've underestimated them." The first shot came from the hunters. Ethan ducked and fired back. The villagers surged forward. The fight spilled across the beach. Waves crashed as sand and spray flew into the air. One of the hunters tried to circle toward the hut. The woman stepped out with a spear in her hands. Her face was pale, but her stance steady. She blocked his path, forcing him back. The girl stayed inside, her hands covering her ears. Tears streaked her face, but she didn't scream. Ethan's blaster hummed as he fired again, dropping one of the attackers. The villagers overwhelmed another, forcing him to retreat toward the boat. The lead man fought hard, but he wasn't prepared for a whole community protecting its own. When the last hunter fell into the water, bleeding and beaten, the beach grew quiet again. The sun was higher now, casting golden light over the wet sand. The villagers stood together, breathing hard, but victorious. Ethan turned to see the woman still holding the spear. Her chest rose and fell quickly. She met his eyes, then slowly lowered the weapon. The lead man staggered to his feet, clutching his side. "This isn't over," he spat. "Others will come." Ethan stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them the next time they try, I'll be waiting." The man's gaze flickered. He backed away toward the boat. The surviving hunters pushed off and rowed toward the stranger's ship. When they were gone, the villagers began to disperse. Some clapped Ethan on the shoulder. Others bowed slightly to the woman and her daughter. Inside the hut, the girl ran to Ethan, wrapping her arms around his waist. "You didn't let them take us," she said softly. Ethan knelt, resting a hand on her shoulder. I told you, you're safe with me. The woman stepped forward, her eyes shining with tears. You've given us more than safety. She said, you've given us a home. Ethan hesitated, the weight of the past weeks heavy in his mind. I'm not family, he said quietly. The woman shook her head. Family is not always blood, she replied. You chose to protect us when you didn't have to. That makes you part of ours. For a moment, Ethan didn't speak. The girl's small hand slipped into his, and he felt something settle deep inside him, something he hadn't realized he'd been missing. Outside, the waves kept rolling onto the shore. The danger wasn't gone. But Ethan knew they wouldn't face it alone anymore. He looked at the woman and the girl, and for the first time in years, he smiled without hesitation. All right, he said, I guess this is home now. The girl beamed. Home, she repeated, testing the human word on her tongue, and as the three of them stood together in the morning light, Ethan knew he had made his choice. He had chosen them over fear, and he would never regret it.